Second couple, we're actually going to hear from a media partnership, which is Lloyds Banking Group and MEC. Lloyds Banking Group was obviously formed at a difficult time in our nation's history out of Halifax and Bank of Scotland and Lloyds TSB. And when it was formed, it consolidated its media planning and buying for all its brands into MEC. So it was actually merging the work of 25 different agencies into one, creating what's now WPP's single largest media client in the UK. Stuart Bowden leads the account for MEC as MD there, and Tim Mayle is head of marketing for Halifax. And let's just have a little glimpse of some of the work that they are involved in.
Hosting the Olympics is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Everyone deserves the chance to say, I was there. Lloyds TSB set about giving people that chance. But the Olympics isn't just inside a stadium. It starts with the flame. To capture the panorama of the Olympic torch relay route, we flew in the inventors of Google Street View, and together we built Torch View. Lloyds TSB's promise is that we are there for the journey, and our Torch View campaign did exactly that. The specially built Torch View bus followed the Olympic torch relay every step of the way on its journey around the country as we created the world's biggest social panoramic snapshot. Lloyds TSB brought the games to the people, making the whole of the UK the Olympic Stadium. We captured every cheer, every flag, and every lump in the throat of the millions who lined the streets to see the flame. Our results were record-breaking. 3.6 million Torch View images were viewed. It was the world's most tagged piece of content ever. Torch View let the people say, I was there.
Brilliant. Okay, Tim and Stuart, do you want to come up? Thanks. We had seats for you reserved at the front, chaps, but... right, I'm afraid I haven't met you before, but Tim, you're Tim and you're Stuart. Yes, I can see from the back.
The badge on.
Time. I'm sorry, I've got Tim here. I do apologise. I do apologise. Now, purchasing of media, I would have thought was very slightly more mechanical and perhaps lent itself to a slightly more procurement style of a sort of, it's all about the cost rather than about the creativity. Comment on that. Is that true, Stuart?
I think for some clients it is still true. I think media, because it's such a scale investment for most clients, can be seen by the procurement teams as more widget orientated, something that's more comparable, more commoditized. But I think increasingly procurement are being managed by the marketing team to make sure they can balance the value that they need to create to the business, to take to the bottom line, with the ability to add value to media agencies. Are most often the partners who are dealing with clients' data, who are working on engagement pieces of content, and I think that viewing it purely as a commodity is a very short-term way, because that does bring you back to market every 3 years, because you're constantly looking to bring that cost down, but those don't tend to be the most successful relationships.
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, we should be using the mic.
I'm sorry,
we?
I won't say any of that word
again.
But yeah, no is the answer. It shouldn't be managed as a commodity.
You've got the Tim.
I think Stuart's right in terms of the relationship with procurement and marketing, and where that sits is really important. And I think what we've tried to do is ensure that that is managed through the marketing services wider team rather than procurement itself. And procurement are leading that that negotiation, as it were. So it's a collaborative process internally for us with the procurement team.
Tell us about the decision to consolidate everything at the time of Lloyds Banking Group being created.
Well, it made obvious sense from a commercial perspective. But also, as we were forming a new bank, you know, in of itself, to have separate relationships didn't make sense either. So it was a natural thing for us to do.
Right, right. And how is the relationship working? We've had sort of relationship tips from Scilla and Gavin. Just give us a little description each of how it works and what the problems are.
I think it's probably the most open relationship that I've been involved in the industry. I think there's
open as in open like other people have open relationships, or in a transparent and
I think open in the sense that there's a real recognition that there is a relationship that needs tending. I think there are often client-agency relationships where it can become very transactional, and people don't put the time and the commitment into understanding that, into nurturing it at a senior level. We use the appraise process between us, and I think that helps us commit to the time that needs to go into that relationship, because if we're not able to talk, we're not able to be honest, we can't resolve the people issues, if we're not able to talk about money openly, it's hard for trust to exist, and if you don't trust, then you can't make new materials, you can't make progress.
I think it's fair to say that to begin with it was really, really hard and difficult, and that is the hardest thing about that new relationship is making that relationship work. But if you're going into it in an open and honest and transparent way, and as Stuart said, having the most senior people within the team supporting that and sponsoring that relationship, then you've got the basis for success. And
did you think you might dump them at some point in those early days? Did you think, this just isn't working? We've given it 3 months. It's just not working for us.
No.
Yeah. We thought you might. I think the guy from the co-op who you mentioned earlier, 6 to 9 months had it pretty easy. I think you need to expect that the first year, particularly for large organisations, to understand each other at every level and understand what you really mean and what you really want. That's a process that will take a full year, and it's often an uncomfortable year.
And that's the sort of time horizon you're talking about, a year. Yeah. Give it a year, and you'll begin to understand whether it's going to work or not. But 6 months, you're not going to know, really.
It's entirely possible to have only met each other for 4, 5, 6 hours during the pitch process before you make that decision, and suddenly you're living together. Yeah. And there are lots of things about practically how you work and emotionally how you want to connect with each other that you still need to learn. And most of your team haven't met most of their team. So there's lots of edges that need to come off, and I think that does take it. Yeah, it's fair to say the first year was pretty bumpy.
Yeah, how grabbing are you though in price negotiations, Tim? We heard Gavin say, "I want the agency to flourish." I think it's a really interesting line to hear from the client. How flourishing do you want MEC to be?
Well, I think any client would want to get as best a deal as possible. But I think, as Gavin would say, we are in a relationship where we want the agency to succeed as well, and we want the agency to to perform that meet our objectives. And I think the common point there is that they are shared objectives. They're not our objectives. They're agencies that the objectives that we own. So yes, we want to be able to demonstrate that we're getting great value for money, and we can year on year improve those performances. But ultimately, the agencies themselves have got to make a return and make there's got to be something in it for them as well.
Yeah, I think it's incumbent on the agencies to want clients to find more value over time. I think if there's a sense that it is a zero-sum relationship and that it's in our interest to conceal value and to not continually strive to do better every year, then we shouldn't be surprised if that relationship becomes stale pretty quickly. So we've got to have their best interests at heart. So we need to be volunteering improvements, and that's commercial.
It's true that in the long term, there's much more of an alignment of interest. It's much more variable sum, and it's much more aligned interest for both of you. Because in the long term, if the agency doesn't thrive, you don't get the agencies that you want because they just think, oh, that's a difficult client, we don't want it. But in the long term, if the client doesn't thrive on the agency part, you're not going to get the business. So basically, if you're not giving value because you've extracted all the value as the agency, if you've overcharged, it's great in the short term because you've got all the money. But in the long term,
But
bounces back, hits you in the face.
I think if you only have a client for 3 years, you're going to lose money in the majority of cases because you've had to pitch, you've had to learn, and learning is really expensive and time-consuming. You need to hire people. I think you have to go into a relationship expecting that you're going to get to 6, 9, 12 years if your business is going to be successful as a result of that. And you're only going to get those relationships if the client senses and knows and can prove that you're
on their side.
You're waking up every morning trying to work out how to make that better, the relationship better and the business better. If they don't feel that, then you're going to run out of road pretty quickly, I think.
I think we should leave it there. There is a question which I won't get you to answer, which is, are women better at managing relationships than men? We all know the answer to that, don't we? Gentlemen, thank you both very much indeed.